Right guys, so day 2 of working on the Jeep. We've got some good work done yesterday. We've got the top cover off, all the knobs and levers. Underneath we got off the brake pedal shaft on the other side, which was good. We got the cross member skid plate off, and what else did we do? Some other bits as well, which I've already forgotten. But we got some good work done, so that's excellent news really. So today we're going to move on to first getting the transfer case levers out, which is not as easy as you might think. There's a pin which goes through here, held on with this little guy who sits in there, and you undo that and then you can knock this pin through. However, the pins are often very difficult to knock through, and it's not as easy as said, and people have a lot of issues with these, so we'll just have to see how we get on with that. It could be a big problem or it could not be a big problem. You can drop the transmission out without removing the levers. We'll have to see how we get on with that. I would rather remove the levers really, so that's the first thing we're going to work on. Then we can come round to draining coolant out of the radiator, because we're going to have to slacken these off to drop the engine down a little bit, so when we come to lowering the cross member, the engine will want to move with it, so we can access the bolts down here. So if you leave these tight, you can see it's a solid like that, so it'll just crack, it'll break here, or it'll break something on the radiator. So we need to drain the coolant out so we can slacken these off and drain the coolant, which is a bit of a pain really, because these are original NOS clamps here, which are really good, because I used the reproduction ones like these up here and I couldn't get it to seal, but the NOS ones work really well. I've left those in the Cosmoline, so that was sealed and wasn't leaking at all, so to separate it's going to be a bit of a pain because we'll have to get it to seal again, but there you go, just one of those things. And then hopefully as well we can move on to dropping down the exhaust pipe, get that out the way so that we can drop the bell housing out, which you can see down there, and then get the prop shafts out, the front prop shaft, disconnect it from the transfer case and go into the back, the rear prop shaft going out from the transfer case, and get the handbrake or e-brake line disconnected as well. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to be getting on with today, so we'll try that. I've got other things to be doing as well, but hopefully we can get some good work done. So let's start with these transfer levers. Where have we got there? Not far enough. Right guys, so I removed the other spring clip. You can see they're loose, and it's ever so close to being just out, but you can just about, probably not. The pin is just on the edge here, you know, it must be just about here, still holding this in. But what we've done is we've reached the edge here. So if we go underneath, right, and we look up, we can see the pin is sitting on the hump there, so we can't move it any further. So what we can do though is, when it comes to dropping down the transmission, we can drop it down a little bit, get that pin a little bit further out, and that should be enough to get the levers out while they're still on the vertical portion there. So they won't, if we put them, you know, if we put them up like that, they can drop down all this way and the pin will be all the way down here, so we'll easily be able to get those out. So that's how we're going to solve that problem. So yeah, I found what some people find, and why some people smash a hole in the side here, is because even with, you know, even with the pin as far as it'll go, it touches the side of the hump there. I mean, my chassis is really nice and straight on this. The tub's been rebuilt, but it's in the same position and everything, so it just seems to be one of those Jeep things, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll have to leave that at the moment. We've got a plan for that and how we're going to do it. I might try wriggling it a little bit more and see if it will come out, but it seems pretty much like it's pretty held in there by that pin, and as it is touching the side here, there's not a huge amount we can do until we come to actually drop in the transmission. So we'll leave that bit for the moment. So guys, we've got the prop shaft off then. You can see it's held on by 9/16 nuts and split washers, but these are captive. These guys here are captive into the brake drum. So when you're undoing them, if you're very unlucky, I can't remember if it's a spot of weld, or there's just razors on the back. We'll have a look when we take it off. But if you're very unlucky, these can just spin and rotate and you won't be able to get your prop shaft off, which is obviously a huge pain, but fortunately mine are good. But remember, when it comes to putting them back on, you have to hold them out while you're putting them in, because they only lock when they're right at the end. So if you move them forward a bit, look, they just spin. So when it comes to putting them on, if I just take one, threads need to be perfectly clean so it's easy, but look, if I just tried to put it on, it would just push it in and you'd never be able to get it on. So you have to sort of pull them out while you're putting it on. But yeah, that's the prop shaft off. That's the first one. Anyway, we'll go round to the front now, and then all the handbrake gubbins has got to come off as well, but we're getting somewhere. And the clutch, there we go, the clutch control tube over there as well, that's got to come out before you can drop the transmission and transfer case, because obviously the clutch control tube there is attached to the transfer case. So there's my prop shaft wrapped up. We might need to take it off at the back as well, because it might be in the way there, but just wrapped up and kept clean at the moment. Trying to undo as little as possible, so I don't have to put it all back, but at the same time I'm trying to do take off a good amount so that it's easy to do. I don't want to be working around things and trying to manoeuvre in areas where it would be much easier if you just took it off, and as we're doing quite a bit of maintenance here, might as well take most of it off, but still don't want to do unnecessary work. So right, let's move on to the front prop shaft then. So to get the transfer case and drop it down easily, because the bell housing is just around here, you can see the exhaust pipe will be in the way. You can see how much it moves when it hasn't got the guard underneath it, so you do need that. If you haven't got a guard, you can see how much support it gives it actually, so it's an important piece to have. But I should be able to then, hopefully, is because these parts have been together for a while, so they won't want to come apart, and they're exhaust parts. They're not too rusted, but an old rusty one, it can cause a huge amount of pain. As we said, this has only been put together a year, so this is fairly easy to take apart. But one which has been on there for 70 years, like this was originally, it's less enjoyable, and sometimes cutting's required. But I should be able to leave the rest of the mountings for the muffler on and just undo this one and tweak this out. But easier said than done. We'll see if it's interested in moving or not. Probably not. So let's go underneath. I haven't got my eye protection. Oh yes I do, hold on. Always best to wear eye protection working underneath vehicles, even though it looks stupid and they sometimes mist up and what have you. I've got bits in my eyes before from working underneath vehicles, and it's not good at all, so you don't want anything dropping in your eyes. Right then. These are 1/2 inch, these two. There's always bits dropping in my face. Right, that clamp is moving. A bit more. Yeah, the difference between working on a vehicle which is in use and freshly put together is very different to working on one which has been together for 70 years and doesn't want to come apart, unfortunately. So things which are easy when things are new are very, very difficult often when things are old. So there's a real difference, but unfortunately that's the way it goes. Right, here we go. So it's just going to be a matter of manhandling it till it wants to behave. Got wires in my back. Right. Might need a bit of malleting action. Oh no, it's quite happy to come apart. So there we go. Might not actually have to undo the exhaust at the manifold actually, if I can move it, because it's got the flexi pipe in it. If I can just move it out of the way like this, there we go, because mine's in good condition again. On an old rusted one, you might not be able to move the flexi joint. See, the flexi joint on this has been well behaved, but on an old rusted one it might not move at all, so this is quite good actually. So yeah, I can just hide that out the way there, and that's the exhaust out the way, so that was easy peasy. So that's a good job done there. So guys, we're on to my favourite job, which is draining coolant out of the Jeep. As you can see, you can probably see the elbow there with the little petcock in it where the coolant drains out of. As you can see, they don't come out particularly quick, so it takes ages, and it also drips everywhere. So I've managed to put a funnel in the way today, which is quite good, so hopefully that'll keep the coolant from going everywhere. Again, this is another easier said than done job, unfortunately, because those little cocks get full of all sorts of rubbish. So and they get locked on as well, so even though you've got them there, you might not be able to drain the coolant because you might not be able to get the cocks to let any coolant out, or they might just shear off. Guys, I've had them shear off on the elbow here, so they're a big pain in the bum. The other one, so there's one there, and then the other one is just there and down by the generator. You just see him lurking there, and that one on my one was so full of rubbish when I first got it, but I thought the gallery was sort of blocked inside the engine, but it was actually just all the rubbish from inside the coolant jacket or the cooling jacket over the years. So they are there, they do work, but they don't work particularly well. And you've got to remember to take the lid off as well, because otherwise, you know, it's a sealed system, pressurized. Well, it is a pressurized system. So if you don't take the lid off, then no coolant can drain out there. So that's just draining away now. Then we'll undo these so that the engine can move and it won't break these. These will be quite difficult to move, actually, these rubbers, because they'll have, you know, they've had 100 degree, practically 100 degree coolant going through them, so they'll be pretty fused on here. So this can be another huge pain, is getting those apart. So we'll do that next. And I've loosened off this bond strap here for when I lean the engine back so that it doesn't smash into the bulkhead there. And I've undone the accelerator linkage as well, so that doesn't also cause an issue when the engine rocks back, it doesn't smack into it. So we're slowly working through the bits we need to do then, guys. We're getting there. So guys, here's what we had to do then. As I thought, loosen these off, but you know, it wasn't leaking because it's actually welded itself. The rubber has welded itself to the pipes here, and you can see, look at that clear outline of how these clamps are on there. So it gets really, really stuck on. So all I did was took a jug of boiling water. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I took a jug of boiling water, poured it over the pipe here, when it was down here, obviously. And that just caused it to expand, you know, loosen and expand a little bit, and then you just rock it backwards and forwards and you can remove it. You have to be careful, as I said, because you don't want to break the brazes and the pipes off, because they can be, you know, it's only thin brass or whatever the radiator's made out of, or these parts are made out of, should I say. So you've got to be careful doing it, but yeah, just a little bit of heat. Heat is your friend. You can see it rotating easily now. A bit of WD-40 sprayed, bit of heat, working it away, and off it goes. So that'll be fun to try and get to reseal when we go back to it. It'll leak for a while, but well, actually, because I changed these ones, it might not leak anymore like it did in that time. But there you go, a little bit of heat on those works pretty well. We'll move on to this lower one here. I'm only having to undo one because it just so it can rock forward a little bit. So on this one, yeah, we'll probably undo this one. We'll try this one and see how we get on with it. Hopefully that should work. So the clutch, your clutch is actually operated by this little shaft here, rocking backwards and forwards on the yoke. So you've got to remove the pin there. It goes onto the transfer case here, so we don't need to worry about that. But inside here is a little bracket, so we need to undo that from the outside, and then we can shufty this to the side like that, and then it'll drop out, and that's how you remove this easily. So first we'll take that off, and then we'll undo the bolts there, and then that should be it. Well guys, so far so good. So what we've managed to do then is got the transmission down onto the jack with a soft cloth underneath it there, right in the centre, so that looks pretty good. The clutch tube came out, that's all removed from over there. And then I've dropped off the side bolts here and dropped it down to as far as it will go on the top bolt, and I've lowered it down a bit to check to see if this is actually going to work. So sort of a proof of concept sort of thing, but yeah, it does appear to be working. It's dropping down gently, and then if we come underneath we can see our pin. I've actually pulled it out, but the pin has dropped down now, so should be able to pull one of those levers out now. So we've just dropped the engine down a touch, and the intention then is to drop it back, to lean it back till the engine itself sits on the firewall. Jam this rag in here to prevent it from getting damaged. I've loosened off this cable as well, so this can bend as it bends backwards. I've been told this is a fine way of doing it, and the engine can lean back on the firewall with no issues. So I'll believe the guys. That was Jeffrey's Engineering who've told me that, so if it doesn't work, Jeffrey's Engineering, you owe me an engine or a firewall, one or the other. But, right, around the other side then, you can see this one's dropped out as well. Now, my concern is this one's not all the way out, is, you know, once it's free of here, is it's only go twang and boing off or something like that, but I don't think it will. So let us come round again, and let's see if we can pull out one of these levers one-handed then. Aha, look at that. So, what are you, come on out, you horrible thing. That lever is actually loose now. It's just stuck in the in its arm. Oh, you bugger! Where are you going? Might need to move because this leaves in the way as well. It's just about getting the shifter selector moved, so I might need to move it and try it in a different position there till we can get it out. So we'll try that, but it's not keen at the moment. You can see it is loose, the pin has come out, so rather than smacking a hole in here, dropping the transmission a little bit is a better way of doing it. But obviously guys don't want to do that, do they? Because it's a big blooming job if you're just trying to work on these. You see how much work I've had to go in just to do this. You've got to drop the transmission all the way down. So let's try and move the selector a little bit and see if we can get it into a better position to pull that one out. So guys, how's it still going? Right, we had to drop it down a fair amount. You can see it's quite dropped down a long way now, and you see how far the pin had to come out to actually be able to lever them out because of the way they sit inside their selectors down there. So that's not an easy job actually. Putting them back in might be quite difficult, so we'll have an experiment with that. I haven't got a cover on this because with the dirt and everything, because we're going to be taking it all apart anyway and cleaning it all out, so that's fine. But it's all moving down. There are no bolts holding it on, it's just held on the edges. Obviously I'm a bit worried, you know, as we release here, if it's got a load of pressure it's kind of going to go twang or something like that. Slightly concerned about that, but we'll have to see. But coming up you can see how far the pins come out and where it was in the selectors. So that's it's not particularly easy to do there. Look how dirty it's got. It's quite incredible actually how the mud, everything collects everywhere, even if you clean it. And around the other side then, there's the selectors waiting to get cleaned. They might be a bit of a pain when it comes to putting back together, let's put it that way. So that might be a serious job. And then round this side, it's twisted slightly to the front a little bit there. So this, my concern is, you know, if I drop it down here, it's going to go pinging off round to the side due to built up pressures and what have you. I'll try and move this and see if it comes back a little bit, but we'll see. So we've dropped it a bit more, guys, and you can see it did twist a little bit as anticipated, which must be just the engine alignment and the engine mounts and what have you. That's how they naturally want to sit. So getting it to go back in is going to be a bit of a, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a two-man job. I mean, guys have done it one man, but I think it's a two-man job really if you want to do it safely and without really causing issues. But the engine started to rock back a little bit. I can get access better to those bolts, the top bolts there. I have to remove the starter, the starter switch, unfortunately. You can see it's moved back, and yeah, it's definitely resting on this. So it's resting on that huge amount of flannel. So we probably have to jack the front of the Jeep up to get the bell housing out properly. But so far, it's sitting and resting down there quite happily. Can't see anything on that side. Nothing's gone twang. I don't think anything's under pressure. This is all removed and everything like that. There we go. It's dropped out the bottom there. You can see how it's spun round. Let's see. See, you can move it fairly easily. None of the bell housing bolts are undone or anything like that at the moment. But it moves easily, so it can be manoeuvred around. So tomorrow, I think I'm going to do lunch now. But I think tomorrow, bell housing bolts starting to remove, start to support under the engine, and we'll see how we get on with that. We can always push this, get this back up if we need to, but yeah, I think that'll be the plan with that. See how the engine naturally wants to sit. Could be interesting. Yeah, it'll be quite a fiddle or a fight on my own to put it back together. I mean, manoeuvring all this heavy metal together on your own would be pretty difficult really. So right then guys, let's leave it at that.